Good morning. Some additional information, some required updates and responses to developments across the weekend, as well as to continue to present to the public and the various subgroups that make up the Jamaican population here and abroad, as well as focusing on some segments of the electorate to keep them focused on the correct and appropriate information. As we are now 48 hours away from a new dawn in Jamaica, the elections voting will begin at 7 a.m. on Wednesday, September 3rd, and by 2 p.m. we will have a new PM. So we just want to confirm to our base, our supporters, and to those persons who have been indicating and are making up their minds that the proposal advanced by the People's National Party and by Mark Golding are better proposals for your life over the next 4 to 5 years. Before we get into the details, I'd just like to bring our attention to today's Gleaner editorial, which is entitled Terrorist Bomb Threats. I will read the first few sentences and elaborate on them briefly. It reads, "It is deeply unfortunate that Horace Chang, the National Security Minister, without offering evidence, accused the People's National Party of responsibility for a series of bomb threats at government offices on Friday. Dr. Chang neither gets nor deserves a pass that he acted in his political role as a General Secretary of the governing Jamaica Labour Party. He doesn't have the luxury of alternating skins for, especially when addressing critical matters of national security, including in this case one of the island's major political parties, of behavior akin to terrorism or something close thereto. If Dr. Chang was briefed to this effect by the police, he should say so, in which case we look forward to the constabulary quickly arresting and prosecuting not only the, quote, PNP elements claimed by Dr. Chang to be responsible for Friday's despicable act, but those who instructed them and on whose behalf they worked." Now, we had responded to this development during our press conference on Friday. 72 hours having passed, there are neither any developments, any announcements from the Jamaica Constabulary Force or a related authority for law enforcement, nor has there been a retraction by the Jamaica Labour Party General Secretary whether or not he was wearing that skin or the skin of the Minister of National Security. But as the Gleaner editorial outlined, it's still the most respective source of news coverage in the Gleaner editorial has outlined the behavior is reprehensible and unacceptable. I move from that to note that the Minister of Local Government, the candidate for the Jamaica Labour Party in West Kingston, has also repeated a phrase that has already gotten the significant pushback by members of the public, including supporters of his party. The claim that they, whoever they are, will not surrender Jamaica. The word surrender is an interesting word, especially this close to general elections. One only has to surrender something that they have taken hold of, either illegally or criminally. It also, I believe, speaks to the mind of the person who has not only uttered it once, but now uttered it on several occasions in front of a base of his party supporters. And one can only wonder if incidents that have been happening across the island, including in East Central St. Catherine, are related to the charge by the deputy leader of the Jamaica Labour Party regarding not surrendering Jamaica. And I won't, for the purposes of today's conversation, mention what was previously mentioned on Friday, or what many Jamaicans across social media are speaking about, the concept of being Jamaican just on the basis of being born in Jamaica. I find it weird that a team that can't either spell Jamaica or understand how nationality is achieved are now speaking about retaining some hostage grip on Jamaica. But I'd like to introduce to my left Cleveland, who will also be co-anchoring this morning's press conference, and again to thank everyone for joining us this morning as we share with the public our readiness for the September 3rd election and present a final message of confidence and resilience to the Jamaican people, those who are Jamaican because they were born here, as well as those who are naturalized Jamaicans, and those, of course, on the voters list. Cleveland?
Thank you, Raymond. Good morning, Jamaicans, and thank you for joining us for our final press conference ahead of our national broadcast this evening on Television Jamaica at 8 p.m. We want to take the opportunity to reiterate that our policies and our programs have been designed to ensure that every Jamaican can have an opportunity to experience and sustain upward socioeconomic mobility. Our campaign spokesperson chair, Mrs. Donna Scott Motley, usually characterizes our manifesto as one that is wrapped in love. And indeed it is, because when we designed our programs, we did that with the intent to ensure that all Jamaicans can have a better life. And that is why we have put together a suite of policy prescriptions that will not be performative, that will not tinker with the issues, but will solve them in a real and tangible way. And I want to use this opportunity to remind the Jamaican people that when they go to cast their vote on election day, that they should cast it for an improvement in the education outcomes in this country. And to that end, we want to remind you of our RIDE program. Our RIDE program is geared towards providing relief and support for vulnerable parents and children who are based in deep rural areas, who are unable to afford the transportation costs, or unable to meet, rather, the transportation costs to send the child to school. And we have designed this program with the understanding that there needs to be a mixture of transportation modalities that are provided for our students. So whilst we are in support of a structured and coordinated bus program, we also recognize that there are deep rural areas with interior roads where a bus is not appropriate to navigate the hilly terrain in those areas. And in that case, it would necessitate a smaller transportation vehicle, a car, a taxi. So we are very firm and confident that we have designed the right program and that it will be an effective resolution to the challenges that our rural parents face in that side, in those areas of the country. We also want to remind you of our EASE program, ensuring adequate sustenance for education. And this is geared towards providing at least one hot meal per day for all students who need it. We recognize that many times absenteeism is elevated because parents cannot afford the lunch money to send a child to school. And we are saying, send the child to school and we will ensure that the adequate nutrition that is required for effective learning, for the teaching and learning process to be carried out effectively, is done, because we will provide the child with one hot meal per day. And we're doing that with the intent over time to move towards providing breakfast as well. And I know some persons will say, but this is being done by the PATH program. But if you recognize and understand what the real challenges on the ground are, then you will appreciate that there are many children in Jamaica who do not qualify for the PATH program, given the rigidities in the metrics to qualify for it, but they're also struggling to afford a meal per day. And that is what we are geared towards resolving. A major proposal that we have made is the adjustment of the income tax threshold. And there are some on the other side who want to pour doubt on it. We are very confident that we will be able to finance the adjustment of the income tax threshold to $3.5 million. We will relax the primary surplus in the budget, and we can do that. If you examine the 5th schedule of the Financial Administration and Audit Act, and you examine further the equation that is embedded in that section of the Act, which was put into law by the last PNP government to ensure a stable debt reduction trajectory, it tells you that given that we are expected to meet the 60% debt to GDP target by the end of this fiscal year, we can reduce the primary balance, the primary surplus that is, and which will create additional fiscal space to the tune of around $70 billion, which can comfortably finance the income tax adjustment. And we have always said that we will also grow the economy at substantial levels that will generate organic growth in tax revenues to finance the adjustment. We did not pull this initiative out of the hat. We sat, we engaged with stakeholders, and we looked at the realities in the country. And the reality is that the middle class in Jamaica is being wiped out. And the reality as well is that Jamaica is heavily taxed. When you look at our tax to GDP ratio relative to other countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, then you will appreciate that Jamaica ranks among the countries with the highest tax to GDP ratio. And against that backdrop, we appreciate that the inflation movement over the last 5 years has reduced the purchasing power of many individuals who earn up to 3.5 million, and even those who earn above. But given that they earn at the low end of the salary scale, then they are bearing the brunt of the cost of living pressures. So when we will adjust the income tax threshold, We're doing so with our teachers in mind. We're doing so with our nurses, our police officers, members of the Jamaica Defence Force. We are thinking of you. We're thinking about the public servants, who majority of them earn within the region of $3 million to $4 million. You will benefit significantly from our adjustment. This is not a promise. This is a commitment. It will take effect on April 1, 2026. And we will do it without raising taxes, without imposing any new tax, and without adjusting upward any existing tax rate. We will do so because we want you to have more money in your pocket so that you can live a decent life and you can afford a quality of life that is appropriate for all Jamaicans, that affords them the dignity. So,
Go ahead.
we also want to take the opportunity to address what we have taken note of, a promise. And I leave it at that, just a promise from the Jamaica Labour Party to raise the minimum wage to $32,000. We believe that the minimum wage is something that should never be politicized, given the delicacies surrounding an adjustment of it. It requires a careful balancing act to ensure that you are taking into account the implications on both sides of the coin. So the PNP, as expressed in our manifesto on page 31, is committed to a livable wage. And this is not a commitment that we will not carry out. We will carry out all our commitments in our manifesto. But we are particularly passionate about this one because we appreciate the need to ensure that Jamaicans live with dignity and that they can afford the opportunity to experience and sustain upward socioeconomic mobility. So as is expressed in our manifesto, we will establish a livable wage commission that will facilitate the process of consultation and consensus building to arrive at a livable wage for Jamaicans. We will not do it in a way that circumvents, that avoids consultation, because we are acutely aware of the implications on both sides of the coin.
The interesting thing, as I pick up from Cleveland, that's a perfect segue to the point I'm about to make. As all of you know, all Jamaicans know, we have had a series of 3 political debates executed by the Jamaica Debates Commission. And I use this opportunity to thank the Jamaica Debates Commission for its continued investment in strengthening Jamaica's democratic traditions. In the social issues debate, the former Minister of Labour, Colonel Charles Jr., spoke. He mentioned nothing about adjustments to the minimum wage. In the economic issues debate, the former Minister of Finance, Favour Williams, participated, and she mentioned nothing about an adjustment in the minimum wage. That debate also had the chairman, as is, well, we've heard he's been removed, of the Jamaica Labour Party campaign, Dr. Christopher Tufton. He mentioned nothing about the increase in the minimum wage. The Minister of Information, or the former Minister of Information, was also in that debate. She mentioned nothing. But more importantly, Andrew Holness was also at that debate and mentioned nothing about any changes to the minimum wage. As a matter of fact, he was complaining throughout the debate and very unassertive and very ambiguous on any issue of policy he tried to cover. So Cleveland is correct. This is late in the day, clutching at the straw to try and salvage a dying campaign. The people of Jamaica are wiser than that, and we are confident in your wisdom. Another matter I'd like to address quickly is that since our last press conference, there have been the publication of poll results, which poll results show that the People's National Party are at least 3.1 percentage points ahead of our opponents. I say at least because the period in which the polls were conducted included the parish rally in St. Mary and the social issues debate, about which I've already spoken. And these results in the new polls, we believe, reflect the bounce coming out of those activities. The polls, however, preceded the economic policy debates. It preceded the Portmore rally on Saturday. It also preceded the leadership debate, where our party leader, Mark Golding, distinguished himself exemplary as the country had expected he would have done. And it also preceded last night's mass meeting in Sam Sharp Square in Montego Bay. We believe that those events which have occurred after the last polls were conducted will also add to the bounds that is now being reflected within the, shall I say, the fortunes of the People's National Party. I think it is the sheer weight of that fact that would have led to some of the diatribe, that the nonsense that we heard as a country from Old Harbour Roundabout last evening, and the statement about not surrendering Jamaica. But more important than that is the clarity that the People's National Party has maintained on our message, some of which have been reiterated just now by Cleveland. And I want to say to all voters that, as we saw on Friday, the men and women of the police force and related law enforcement agents are serious about ensuring that September 3 happens in a state of safety and security, where voters of all age groups and all stripes and intention will be able to make it safely from their homes to their respective polling stations, cast their ballot, one ballot to one voter, same ballot to same voter, in free and fair elections under the supervision of CAFE and other observers. We are also confident that attempts to derail, such as happened on Friday, or happened after our peaceful and successful meeting in Sam Sharp Square, will be unsuccessful. What am I speaking about? Last night, after our Sam Sharp Square rally, some of our buses were targeted by people clad in green, throwing stones. One young lady, at least one, is now hospitalized as a result of that act of violence. We're seeing a pattern of intimidation as well in southern St. James and in southern St. Elizabeth, where young people, mostly young men, are being targeted and arrested without a clear reason being given for their incarceration. And that persons are being visited in their communities where police officers are asking for them by name. I use this opportunity to remind Jamaica that the Commissioner of Police, Dr. Kevin Blake, has made it pellucidly clear that the men and women of the constabulary force must act in the professional manner and standard that our country in 2025 expects of them. We make no further statement nor accusation, just to say that the seeming habit of persons being visited in their communities and pictures being shown of them on telephones, and even in one case that I am very closely aware of and which I am monitoring, the individual said that the police officer did a better job of canvassing his intention to vote on Wednesday than the canvassers that had been deployed by either party to go into that community and to visit him. I'd also like to speak to an issue, though I don't want to elevate it, because my granny said if you follow a fool, you turn bigger fool yourself. Where in my own constituency, my opponent has been wont to be on his public address system, making very errant and dastardly accusations of, he believes, theft while I served in St. Elizabeth. And I served in St. Elizabeth up until February of 2016. What he's actually saying of the men and women of the police force is that the constabulary is the most lethargic in the world. Because if there was a case to investigate, and 9 years later, someone who has been as public as I have been over that time, they can't confirm and act upon these accusations being bandied about by one person and one person alone, my opponent, then it would be a serious accusation levied at the feet of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. But as one constituent said to me, when you are MP, get rid of all of the waste, including the leading waste man and the leading waste manufacturer. I use this opportunity, therefore, to recommit to Jamaica that the 63 candidates assembled by the People's National Party are Jamaicans by birth. We are patriots. We're sons and daughters of the soil. We understand that our role in these elections is to campaign vigorously and within the law, and to ensure that upon our success, we represent the people who elect us with every fiber of our body, with our hearts, and with our souls, because we are committed to bring to life Mission Jamaica Love and to bring to the leadership of government Mark Jefferson Golding so that Jamaica can be transformed during his tenure, and that this country can become not just the country, the land of our birth, but the land within which our dreams can be achieved, our families will be safe, our children will be better educated, our elderly and sick better taken care of, our men and women allowed to move in stride to achieve their own industrious results and benefit in a land of their birth that centralizes them, that honors them, where no longer our taxi operators and our security guards will be ridiculed as political jokes and banter, but will be honored and dignified and elevated by an administration led by Mark Golding. To voters going out, therefore, please do so swiftly. Carry your identifications. If you don't have a current voter ID and your name is on the voters list, you will still be permitted to cast your ballot. You will be asked to do an affirmation or to swear on. There is information at all polling stations that captures unique data. You may be asked some questions. Answer the questions clearly and respectfully. And we are also confident that the men and women that have been recruited by the Electoral Office of Jamaica as poll clerks and presiding officers and other election day officials will act in the manner of their training and will eschew their own political intentions and be open and clear communicating to the voter so that our voters are able to put their X beside the head, and some may do otherwise, but that they will be allowed to do so without any intimidation or any overreaching by instructions that are weighted one way or the other.
Thank you, Raymond. And whilst you're speaking, I got a message from a friend who's a security guard, and he asked if there's anything in there for me in the manifesto. And I thought it's, again, a perfect opportunity to remind the Jamaican people that a signature proposal from us in this election cycle, which will be done, is the removal of taxes on overtime pay. And we appreciate, to my friend who is listening to me, we appreciate that majority of the income that is earned as a security guard comes from the overtime that is done. And we are committing to you to remove taxes from overtime pay. You will have more money in your pockets to spend in the economy. There will be greater levels of economic activities being stimulated. The government will be able to recover funding through its indirect taxes. So we are not of the view that our proposals, our programs, and what we will do will be done in a fiscally reckless way. So we will give back $35,000 per month from our income tax adjustment. We will give you back money through our removal of taxes on overtime pay. We'll also remove taxes from tips as well, because we appreciate that the country has gone through a period of fiscal consolidation, of belt tightening. We have made the difficult choices, particularly in the last PNP government. The country has achieved a degree of macroeconomic stability, largely an outcome of the difficult fiscal and economic reforms that were pursued and implemented by the PNP, for which we paid the political price in 2016 to get the country where it is at today with respect to that stability. And we are committed to safeguarding it. We enhanced the fiscal rules to safeguard that stability. The downward movement of the debt to GDP ratio is an outcome of what we did to make it legally binding on any government to ensure that the ratio reaches 60% by a particular legislated timeline. I also note, before we field questions from the media, I've seen this nonsensical argument in social media that PNP is relying on GLP's economy to fund its proposals, which indicates that the economy is somehow doing well. And I want to put on my economist cap right now. There's a difference between macroeconomic stability and the real economy. What the country has been able to achieve over the last 10 years is stability in the macroeconomy, which means that certain indicators are stable and are moving in a positive direction, i.e. debt to GDP ratio. I just said why the debt to GDP ratio is where it's at today, largely an outcome of the legislation that the PNP put in place to force any government, PNP or JLP, to get the ratio to where it is at today. NIR improving, a sign of stability. Inflation that is managed by the independent central bank, not by cabinet, not by the Holness government, the independent central bank. It was the PNP that started the work to move towards inflation targeting to give the bank the independence. The JLP came to office in 2016, saw it on the books, and did the right thing, continued where the PNP left off in 2016. But the real economy is different from macroeconomic indicators. The real economy is that part of the economy that affects you in a tangible way. It's about prices. It's about output. It's about growth in the economy. It is about the state of our industries. And if you want a good picture of what the economy looks like in terms of the state of our industries, look no further than the dismal growth rate of the Holness-led government. Since they have been in office in 2016, over the last 9.5 years, they have grown the economy by less than 2%. That is unacceptable, and that cannot give you the income that you need and the quality of life to afford you the dignity that every single Jamaican needs. So let's make it absolutely clear that the real economy is different from what we talk about macroeconomic indicators. Macroeconomic indicators do not rather give you a comprehensive picture of the health of the economy. And with that, we'll open.
Just before we open for questions, quick note, we've already seen in this past week where the Electoral Office had to come publicly very quickly to declare to the public that a document being circulated which bore their marks and logos, or what looked very close to it, was actually fake. Regrettably, we live in a period where desperation is practiced by persons in otherwise high places, and we are also asking that persons, for the correct information, go directly to the website of the Electoral Office of Jamaica. But for the purposes of this press conference, we're asking the public to go to PNP Jamaica. That's Jamaica PNP, at Jamaica PNP, and on Instagram, and also on Facebook, and also on YouTube and TikTok. The same handle for curated, correct, and clear information. We also have published an infographic that indicates our hotlines for persons to call. And our candidates also have direct numbers and handles for persons to get information on voting day. And we'd like to also acknowledge that there is a query feature on the EOJ website where persons can go, put in their full name and their date of birth, and the results will show you where your polling station is and where what your constituency is and where in the constituency your polling station is. We had to respond to these because since we've been here, these are pointers coming in from persons watching at home or listening in on IRI FM. With that, we now open the floor for your questions.